No, what the government is trying to do, is to set up programs justified on the assumption that they are equalizing. I think the crucial thing is that when you try to create this equality, you don't create the equality, you create something else. I've been doing studies now for 20 years of programs designed to increase equality. They increase inequality because even when the programs are designed for disadvantaged groups, they help the affluent members of disadvantaged groups, while the lower members of those groups fall further behind than ever before. And not just in the United States, in India, to some extent in Malaysia, the very same thing is happening.
On the DNC this week, MIT released some data that confirmed our worst fears about the Supreme Court. The university's incoming class will be significantly less diverse than in previous years, and that's thanks to last year's ruling that gutted affirmative action. MIT, one of the first to release enrollment data since that ruling, says its percentage of black students dropped to 5% from 15% last year, and the percentage of Hispanic and Latino students dropped to 11%, down from 16%. Overall, all racial and ethnic minority groups had a decrease in enrollment except for Asian Americans, who had a 7% increase.
Let me tell you why this is good news that affirmative action got struck down by the Supreme Court justice. Now, many liberals who are going to see this, one thing is I'm going to tell you is that if you want to critically think, you must accept the reality that you're going to offend some people, right? If you're not willing to offend somebody, then you're telling me you're not willing to think critically about any issue or any topic that you come across. And just because I'm the same skin color as you, there's no reason for you to assume that we all benefit equally from affirmative action. You saw from the intro, Thomas Sowell kind of unveiled the inconvenient truth about affirmative action, that it only benefits upper middle class black people and minorities of those groups. The poor, because when these people put these framings about affirmative action, many people who support affirmative action likes to put out this idea that it's supposed to help with the wealth gap inequality between the white community and the black community. And that is a lie. This affirmative action been around since the 1960s and has not really helped. We gave this program 60, sometimes I think even 70 years to show the results. And the results come in every single year showing that there's not been an increase or a closing of the gap in any regard. But then the same black liberals will try to diminish any black person's success by saying that they would not be in their positions of success without affirmative action, which is a lie. It's merit over race. This is the title of this video, merit over race. The MIT shares of black students plummeted after affirmative action was struck down. And as you notice from the intro, the increase, Asian students' participation increased. And the reality is, when you're trying to equalize outcomes, you automatically discriminate against people who are typically more qualified, typically more competitive, and typically better candidates for those same admissions. And before I go into the full video, I want to show you some context, like, some of the ramifications of affirmative action. Up to half of UCLA med students are failing basic medical competency tests. Affirmative action to blame. Because the reality is, there's not enough qualified black people to actually meet a lot of the racial quotas that these woke corporations like to put up and virtue signaling with. Oh, we want 13% of representation in this industry. How is it possible for you to get 13% of black representation in your company when there's only about 5% of black people who are actually qualified for these positions? There's certain degrees in these Ivy League colleges where there's not a single black graduate that holds a master's, bachelor's, or doctorate degrees in these fields. And yet these same people want affirmative action. They want racial quotas. The implicit bias there is that you're picking race over merit when it's supposed to be merit over race. Because who gives the better outcome? What is best for the society? Merit. Merit-based standards are better for society than race-based standards for society. I make the argument all the time. If you put Michelle Obama kids in college, they'll benefit greatly. They'll have an unfair advantage over their wealthy white counterparts who they come from the same income class. Make it make sense. The Obamas are worth $70 million, but Michelle's daughters is going to have preferential treatment because of the color of their skin. How is this not racism? How is this not privilege? The same arguments we make about legacy-based admissions is the same argument I make about affirmative action. We should not be allowing people to have access to our education system, to have the Ivy League on their on their resume when they're not qualified. Affirmative action suit details how a law school blackballed an accomplished white man and opted for an unqualified black woman. Harvard president, anyone who's accused of plagiarizing people? There's obvious evidence of it, right? And she had to step down. And what was her background? Oh, she came from an upper middle class Haitian family. Oh, how about that? Look at the stats. Black immigrants have a higher average income than foundational Black Americans. And I put the air quotes there because I'm like, end of the day, we all supposed to come from the same place, right? We're all from Africa, right? But then they want to make that distinction when they want to make a point. That's my problem with a lot of foundational Black Americans, allegedly. But this is the problem. I highlighted the problem. Y'all don't even benefit from these programs. Y'all defend like hell. They defend these programs like hell. Korean Jean-Pierre, same thing. First Black, this press secretary. Oh, what's her background? Oh, damn, another American descended from immigrants. What's going on around here? But then when I criticize, affirmative action don't benefit Americans as a whole, especially Black Americans, because it causes something that many conservatives call mismatch theory. And mismatch theory is essentially you're putting people in a position where they have a higher probability of failing. For instance, the NBA is 74% Black, right? If I institute affirmative action for the NBA, I'm gonna put in a lot of white basketball players who technically skill-wise would not be competitive for the team that they're going on and actually gonna be a drain on the team, right? And then when cuts happen, you're gonna see majority of the players that get cut are white. Why? Because they couldn't compete at the same level of those who tend to make it in the NBA, which is Black players. This is the same circumstances that's happening right now in Ivy League colleges' first year's admission statements. But the left is going to frame this as, oh my God, this is such a bad thing. It's the worst fear of us all. And this is trying to play into white guilt. But look at the white community. Second place to the Asian Americans. But I've been seeing it here all my life. All my life I've been hearing Black Democrats talking about how it's a white man, systematic racism, white privilege. But who benefited the most from affirmative action getting cut? Asians. But you want to sit here and say, and look, even white people lost attendance compared to last year. But the biggest drop was Black and African Americans. What that tells you, affirmative action is racism and discrimination under new management. I don't care if you feel offended, leftists. Like I said, if you want to think critically, you have to risk offending somebody. The superpower that I have is I'm not easily offended. You can call me names, you can call me Uncle Tom, you can call me all this, but you can't call me a liar. Because the results are in. The black community are not producing kids that can compete at an academic level to maintain their racial quota without special treatment. Black privilege. This is what black privilege look like. You took away black privilege, aka affirmative action, and look what happened. False bravado, all talk, fluff, flash, no substance. Look at this. Conservatives have been talking about, hey, the family structure, the culture is what's holding the Black community back. It's the decisions that the Black community makes in their communities that's giving us the bad outcomes. No, it's systematic racism. It's pernicious racism. It's institutional racism. Hey, affirmative action is giving preferential treatment based on someone's skin color. So if a poor white kid comes in and he has the test scores, he's able to compete at a high level with everyone that mostly go to MIT versus an unqualified Black woman, but she barely made the cut. And you look at the numbers, oh, look, there's only 10% of Black students in the college. We need more representation because we got 13% of the population that is Black, and we're underrepresented. Black people are underrepresented in college. So we're gonna pick the unqualified Black woman who barely make the cut versus the kid from poor rural Ohio. We're gonna deny him because of his skin color. How's that not racism? Affirmative action was never about equality. It was about giving privilege to minorities for the benefit of Democrats, because the affirmative action was instituted in the 1960s. Did you know before the 1960s, there were many Black people who graduated college? Hell, Martin Luther King was a third generation college graduate. Third generation. But then fast forward 60 years later, you have many Blacks who graduate college are now saying, I'm the first Black college graduate in my family. How the switch happen? How did this happen? It's because there's a culture from the liberal Democrats. Democrats have infiltrated black culture and has crippled the black culture, the black psyche so much that black people themselves will condemn someone who is smart, articulate. Don't try to lie to me. Don't try to lie to me. Oh, you talking white, you speaking white, you act white. How is speaking standardized English? How is carrying yourself well in society? How is showing up on time white? Make it make sense, right? This is my problem with the left and liberals. You label everything that is good decision making, good decisions, good habits, right? That will take you far in life. You categorize it as white to label it something, saying, hey, because of your race, you shouldn't be doing this. What you're implying there? I'm being honest. Liberals do this a lot. Oh, you're not black. You're not talking black. What does talking black mean? Some type of stereotype. That's what you're gonna reference? And then you get mad when other groups of people stereotype you. Make it make sense, Black America. Y'all need to let go of affirmative action, because affirmative action is actually holding y'all back. Affirmative action is masking the problems that's actually affecting the black community. How come the black community without special treatment cannot produce a result where they're at least representative in academia? The same way I can make the argument, hey, white America, you're a majority of the population. How come the black community is producing better athletes than your community? And everyone's going to go back to, oh, the skill, the conditioning, the talent level. Hey, y'all just need to get better. That's what black people are going to tell white America for why the NBA is 74% black. But God forbid, Asians, whites, Hispanics tell the black communities, yeah, y'all need to get better. Y'all need to hit those books more. Hey, look, Asian students put more time in. The Asian students put more time in. Did you know on average, Asian students study 2 hours, about an hour and a half more than other groups of people? Is it any accident that they're the top? No wonder they're the top of the class, usually in Ivy League schools. No wonder they make up the majority of attendance, even though they're a minority. The same way black community is overrepresented in the sports, the Asian community is overrepresented in academia, especially high levels of academia. They make up 40% of the admissions in Ivy League schools. The NBA makes 74% of admissions in NBA, 51% of admissions in the NFL. That shows a marker of what? Hey, these people are doing something that are producing this outcome. That's the reality. It ain't systematic racism. It's none of that. It's the actions, decisions, and behaviors of the community, the process within the community, the values within those communities that are producing the outcomes. Because end of the day, I'm going to stand on this. Data does not prove a narrative. Data only proves the results, and the results are in. The black community is just not producing academically competent people that can compete at the Ivy League level. That's it. And the sooner the black community can accept that reality, the better they are at actually making changes that actually will give them the outcome that they're looking for. Because affirmative action, end of the day, is a shortcut. But enough of my long-winded rant. Let's take a look at how the MSNBC panel reacts to this news.
For Asian Americans, who had a 7% increase. And the university actually saw this coming. It was among several universities and colleges that signed an amicus brief to the High Court 2 years ago in support of keeping race-conscious admissions. Joining me now, Eddie Glaw Jr., James S. McDonnell, Distinguished Professor at Princeton University. He's also an MSNBC political analyst. Professor, it is great to see you as always. So this is not a surprise to anyone. I think when SCOTUS struck down affirmative action, you and others warned us about the impact this would have on students of color, saying that we would begin to see a kind of segregated higher education landscape. Your initial reaction now?
It's not segregated. There's still minorities in there. It's just you just can't get in. You just ain't competitive. I'm not calling black people lazy. I'm not calling anyone else lazy. I'm just saying you're not competitive, right? I'm not going to call white basketball players lazy because they're not representative in the NBA. I'm just going to say, hey, y'all just not competitive. That's it. Being not competitive doesn't mean you're not working hard. It's just, hey, you don't have the blend of physicality, skill level, talent to actually compete at the same level or in a competitive level as other groups of people. That's it. But instead of the black community going back and looking back and say, okay, maybe we should focus more on academics. Maybe if we spend more time with our kids, because their studies shown that parent involvement in the kids' education, there shows a correlation of better academic outcomes than parents who are not involved in their kids' academic development. Black community, sorry, based on your habits, based on your behaviors, you're the race of people who are less involved in your kids' education compared to other groups of people. Asians and whites being the most involved in their kids' education. That's behavior. That's not racism. That's behavior. And every time I try to make this point, people are always trying to find reasons to make excuses for the black community. And I'm tired of the excuses. Excuses are for losers. Stop making an excuse and make an effort. And this is the time, affirmative action, this should be a highlight to the black community that, hey, y'all been relying on affirmative action to get y'all through. This is cheating. This is shortcuts. And like I said, I check short-term gain for long-term pain. And the long-term pain in the black community is the black community has not been able to look back and reflect on its own decisions that's creating these outcomes currently. Instead, it uses affirmative action as a crutch, as a way to excuse that work, that hard work they have to do in self-reflecting and saying, hey, doesn't matter the education system, because Asians, another statistic that I got for you, it doesn't matter which education system you put the Asian student in, he's going to be top performer academically. And the biggest correlation is how involved Asian parents are in the educational development of their children. And as a black man, all I keep telling the black community is, if you just as involved in your kids' academic development as the Asian parents are with their kids, your kids will have a better outcome. Y'all talking about how educated black women are, but 70% of kids are born to single mothers. That means single moms are not spending time with their sons, teaching them how to read. And then you're wondering why the black male literacy rate is so low, because you don't read to your kids. You don't read with your kids. I do that with my kids. I read with them. I invest in their education, but I'm a homeschooling parent. I'm going to be more involved in my kids' academic development than someone who sends their kid to public school. But y'all don't want to pay attention to these things. These sociologists, they don't pay attention to these things. They don't pay attention to how behavior decide outcomes. Instead, they want to look for superficial BS like racism. Racism isn't the biggest problem in the black community's lives. It's their actions and behaviors and their decisions they make as a community. That is the biggest problem in their lives. But instead of looking that man in the mirror, that woman in the mirror, that community in the mirror, they want to focus on superficial BS like this. I digress.
Now that we have seen these initial new numbers from one university, and what are you hearing from others in academia?
Well, first of all, it's great to see you, Eamon. We knew this was going to happen, as you said. I suspect that the data will be similar at the other Ivies, my own institution, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, Penn, Cornell, and the like. We should probably see this across the board in terms of elite institutions and ranking or top state public institutions. We knew this. We knew the data. We saw what happened in California. We know just 10 years after Prop 209 was passed, only 96 black freshmen were admitted to a class of over 4,000 at UCLA. We saw a 44% decline between 2006 and 2022 at the University of Michigan. And so this was, in fact, the expected outcome. And what's so tragic about it, there are those folk who are reading this outcome as an example of what happens when merit is taken as the principal deciding factor.
As it should, right? And it's up. And this is the funny part is they don't explain the negative aspect. Another negative aspect of affirmative action is the fact that I just showed you how UCLA, half of their medical students could not pass basic medical competencies. I just showed you that, right? And then another study came out, right, that a majority of medical students graduated are overrepresented. That means like they'll have a medical class of like 20% of black students before affirmative action or before all these race conscious admissions programs are started. And the implication there is, oh, you're lowering standards for minorities to meet your quotas or to virtue signal about, look how diverse our medical schools are. Look how much women we have in our medical schools. And then, and down the line, it's going to create discrimination in the future, because then people are going to have this narrative in their mind and this perception, which is kind of valid, but given the outcome that happened the minute you remove affirmative action, is that many of these people, many of these black students that graduate medical school or going to medical school with these race-conscious admission programs in place are getting in on a lower standard compared to someone else who is of Asian or white, because they know, oh, the Asian or white medical student has to work 2 times as hard as the black person because they're not the preferred race to be in these programs. So then people are going to start with their, because end of the day, you can pay affirmative action with education, sports and all this other stuff, but no one's going to be playing affirmative action with their lives. They're like, no, 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 no. I want that white man. I want that white doctor. I want that Asian doctor, because people know you're not going to give them special treatment. So if they're a doctor after affirmative action, they know, oh yeah, you must have been really good, because you must have been really good for them to let you go in. While compared to a black doctor with affirmative action programs in place, people are going to be more skeptical of their skills. It's the same argument that Charlie Kirk made about the DEI pilot. Hey, before DEI programs, black pilots weren't that prominent. Now you're trying to overemphasize on getting more black pilots in there. You're opening up to what? More incompetence in your ranks, because you're not the core of your mission is not to create good pilots, is to have diverse pilots. And that's always going to conflict with quality. And that's one of the inconvenient truths that a lot of these DEI advocates do not want to accept or acknowledge, is that you suffer quality. You suffer in quality when you prioritize diversity. That is the reality. And a lot of these racial inequalities that they're trying to fix, it's just, you're just trying to get special treatment for people based on the color of their skin. And you're trying to discriminate against qualified people just because they happen to be overrepresented. And one thing about diversity, and this is the hypocrisy of diversity, is that if it's good for one, it should be good for all. Why are you not pushing diversity programs for the sports? Why are you not pushing for diversity programs where minorities are the majority, if it so-called works? Because you understand that it doesn't work. You understand that diversity and inclusion is not about equality, it's about giving privilege. And that's the reality. And the data has shown that. When affirmative action was in place in these Ivy League schools, they were actively discriminating against Asian Americans. Minority on minority crime. Look at that. But when it happens to black people, when black people get discriminated, oh my God, we're supposed to be outraged. But when Asian students are getting discriminated on that admission seat, you're going, oh no, that's the sacrifice we have to make. That's the trade-off we have to make to get more black students in these Ivy League. No, discrimination is discrimination, no matter who it happens to. And it seems like every day DEI continues to prove itself is that, hey, DEI just merely means exclusion of the majority, whoever that majority happens to be. And that's the reality of DEI. This is why they don't push DEI in leagues or in industries that's majority dominated by blacks. Because the minute you introduce DEI into an industry that's majority ran or worked that has a massive representation of black people, you understand that DEI must discriminate against black people to make up their numbers. And this is my argument for why affirmative action is discrimination. But I know this was a long video. I didn't mean it to be this long, but I felt like I really had to get this off my chest because I'm tired of all these narratives. I'm tired of everyone's trying to give credit for black people's success due to affirmative action. But it's hard not to really fight against that for the fact that you're putting this stigma on black people who graduated from these colleges. And I think all the black people that made it on their own merit after affirmative action, I think they'll be much more prouder about their accomplishment for the fact that they know, oh yeah, affirmative action got struck down. So the reason I got into MIT was because of my own merit, not because of my skin color. And I think that does wonders to a kid's confidence versus finding out that, oh yeah, you was a diversity hire. I think that'll hurt a kid's confidence. And this is the kind of the counterproductive results that DEI, affirmative action, all this attempts at making equality actually does to the black community. But, I digress. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section below. You agree with me, disagree with me? I'd like to hear it all in the comment section. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.